Hello and welcome to my YouTube Live. If you're expecting perfection, you've come to the wrong place. But here's what you can expect from just about every single YouTube Live I do. Number one, cutting edge content about how to show up more authentically and make your life better and your business better. And two, laser coaching for people who want to step into what I like to call the warm seat. I don't want it to be uncomfortably hot for you. But you can kind of think of me as like a dog following a scent. I will take you through my process of emotional inquiry, and I'm here to ask questions and help you hone in on and untangle whatever thoughts and feelings are impacting you right now on whatever topic we're talking about. So it's a fine line between inviting someone to open up to me and like poking too hard and to make them shut down. I do my best to meet people where they're at, trust my instincts, and follow my aliveness. Please remember that this is a YouTube Live and it is being recorded and it will be used to help spread the word about my business and offerings. So although I'll do my best to create a safe space for you to show up, it's really up to you to decide if what you want to talk about or bring up would be more appropriate to do in a one-on-one conversation with me. So that said, I am thrilled that you are joining me today. I've got my awesome assistants on the call to manage the chat and field your questions. If you want to submit a pre-recorded question or participate live, you can go to wendygarrido.com/help and fill out the form. In the meantime, hydrate if you're thirsty, pee if you need to, take a long, loud sigh if you can get away with it, and settle in. We're going to get started in just a few minutes, and I am so glad to have you here. I'm live. I didn't know I was live that fast. I thought the timer went faster than that. Thanks for joining me for my first YouTube Live. I feel excited and only slightly nervous in the sort of way that I always used to when I was playing pickleball tournaments where I felt like I had to pee, but I don't actually. Welcome to the self-compassionate way to get through holiday gatherings and make it less likely that you'll lose your shit. I'm not here to make any guarantees, but I hope that going through this, there's like at least one or two or three things that stick out to you that you can carry with you as you go into the complexities of this holiday season. So, I don't know how much you can tell when I look down at my slides or look up at you. You can probably tell. But I'm guessing that you're here because maybe at least one person that you're planning to see over the holidays is hard for you to handle, and or you're worried about getting sucked into old patterns and dynamics, whether that's with people that you've been dealing with your whole life, or maybe it's people that you don't even know yet, but you don't want to act the way that you always have been with new people. So also, I'm going to guess that like most of us, you're doing your best to heal from your past and change how you show up in your relationships. But also, despite your best efforts, my best efforts, sometimes it's just fucking hard. So I'm not saying that any of us will make it through perfectly and everything will go exactly as we wanted. I'm not saying it won't. Like, I think that there is so much potential that when we change how we show up in a dynamic, the dynamic changes, and there's a lot of possibility for change. On the other hand, it's okay if it doesn't. It's okay if there's just a small amount of change that gets created this time. Or even if everything plays out the exact same way, but in your head, you're able to witness it in a different way. That's progress and it will build on itself over time. So feel free to post a comment or question a question in the comments or a comment in the comments as we go if you want to. I will have a Q&A time at the end. but also I feel flexible today. And if you have a question along the way, I may just pause and answer the question before moving on to the next things. So, like I said, I'm kind of thinking mostly about being with family for holiday gatherings, but if it's something like going to a holiday party at your partner's office sounds like a nightmare to you, these strategies will apply there as well. Like I can get through it all, but it's not my favorite thing to go to those things. But it's a chance to change the fucking dynamics to the best we can without being hard on ourselves where we can't. So, take a deep breath if you want to. I thought it would be helpful to remind us why it's okay to give yourself some grace. Okay, ready? I like this one. So, every single one of us, right this very moment, is carrying the weight of a lot of fucking stress and trauma and energy and issues that we are dealing with. Like, there's from our broad intergenerational trauma. I just had to bring this because it's my favorite fucking book of the year. It didn't start with you. That like I had heard about intergenerational trauma before, but it was only from like a super woo-woo perspective. But this brings it down to like science. So whether we know it or not, to the extent that we're aware of it or not, we are working through and dealing and trying to heal from the trauma of our parents and grandparents. So thanks, Amy, for making me bigger. I forgot. So we are healing from the trauma of our family members. Like the studies in the rats show that the grandchildren rats are still afraid of the scent that their grandparents got traumatized by, even though the grandkids had never been traumatized. So here we are, little mice that we are, wandering around through the world, sniffing these different scents, having these different reactions, not even fucking knowing why we're having those reactions. Sometimes it correlates to something in our lifetime, sometimes it doesn't. So we're holding all of those things. And we can heal through those things by sitting and being with those feelings and acknowledging them and, yeah, shifting them, being with them. So there's that, right? Trauma before our lifetime. Also, there's trauma that we experienced as children in our formative years, whether it's littler traumas or significantly huge and awful traumas. Like, we are all carrying those things that are in the patterns of how we show up every day. So it's like, I don't know, it's like you think about a tree that got bent early on in its childhood, in its youth, when it was a sapling, right? Like, can it come straighten back up? Probably, but it's gonna be harder than if it hadn't. So those things are impacting us. They're impacting you right now, they're impacting me right this second. On top of that, there's the type of trauma, big and small, that's happened since we were kids as adults. Like, whether it's a one off, like violent or tragic event that's happened to us as an adult, whether it's things that we have seen happen around us, but also sometimes it can be small things like that time I did a workshop and I had the people who were upset that I was crying in the workshop. Like, that made me feel less likely and less comfortable putting myself out there to do workshops more. Is that a huge trauma in the grand scheme of my life or things? No. But does it affect how I show up? Yeah, and especially in certain contexts and situations. Beyond that, we have social and political stresses that we are dealing with around us, right? We have the things that are currently true and happening that impact us, the choices and options and laws that apply to us. And then we have the fears and the worries and the stresses of what has been and what might be. Those are all also in our nervous system right now. Not to mention major life stressors, right? Death, divorce, moving, changing jobs, having a baby. I don't remember health issues. I don't remember all of them. But show me someone who hasn't had a major life stressor or transition happen in the last 1 to 5 years. I don't, I mean, and then there's COVID. So we've all had stuff going on. And then there's whatever the daily stressors are, right? Like you didn't get enough to eat, or you had to deal with a difficult customer, or like whatever. There's those things going on top of it. So I hope that by reminding you of this giant fucking stack of stress, trauma, patterns, and conditioning that we are all walking around with on a daily basis. And I don't mean it in like a negative, like, oh, you're never going to get better sort of way. But I'm just like, the struggle is real, and it's okay that you're having a hard time with it sometimes, and it's okay that you can't suddenly be like dancing around as if none of that is applicable to you, because it all is applicable to you. I don't know why I get tender about these things sometimes, but we get so hard on ourselves, and we make it so personal that like there's something wrong with you if you can't show up at your Christmas holiday this year and not get, I'm going to have to get used to the changing of the screens because I love it when you change screens, Amy, but it's also distracting. But we have to like show up. We show up at these things and we think, or I mean, if I think about me, if I were going back for a family holiday, which I am not this year, like it's easy to feel like I should suddenly be able to handle all of those things. And it's okay that we can't. And it's okay that we can handle it better this time and better the time after that. And as we handle it better, more fucking shit is going to show up to remind us what else is left to heal. So it is not really, I don't think there's an end in sight for any of us who are alive on the planet right now. Like, I think that we are constantly going to be in a state of healing and growth. I think it's true for most living beings, and is it all, probably all living beings? Like, if we're not growing, we're dying. If we're not healing and changing, then it begins to be the end, I think. I don't know, that sounds dismal, but I kind of think it's true. Okay, slides, go back to my slides. So like I said, I didn't say this, like I'm gonna say, most things are easier said than done, right? So I'm gonna go through here, we're gonna talk about things, and on a logical level, it's like, oh yeah, that shouldn't be so hard, that should be easy. But it's not always gonna be easy, and that's, like I said, that's okay. I don't really drink, never really have, but if we had a drinking game, maybe we will. I'll just drink some water. Every time I say that's okay, I'll take a drink. It's a good hydration tactic. Feel free to do it as well. So, like, if you can take just a few things from here that will help you get through it better, with less stress, with less self-judgment, I would consider that a win for you and also for me in sharing this with you. Now I kind of don't want to say that's okay because I don't know. It's like have points we're adding up to or something. Excuse me. I have a very contentious and difficult relationship with my mom at the moment and for the last 7 years. But there were a number of things that she did extremely well when I was a child. One of them was she drilled it into our heads since I was in like 4 years old, 3 years old, our being me and my two half sisters. She'd be like, and when you're at school, who's your best friend? And we'd be like, Rachel or Jennifer. And she's like, well, and who's your best friend? And she'd be like, you're your own best friend, right? So I was thinking about that. And like, how do you or me, when I'm in my situations, how do we be our own best friend as we go through these holiday gatherings? Maybe you have a partner there that can support you. Maybe you're on your own going into enemy territory, whatever. But the more that I unravel the patterns of codependence in myself, the more I realize it's not healthy or sustainable in the long term for me to always or often be turning to my partner to help me process my feelings. So, when you can be your own best friend as you go through these, you will probably be a lot nicer to yourself than you usually are. Because it might be that sometimes you've been your own worst enemy, and that is not fun for the you that is being the enemy or the you that is being treated by yourself as the enemy. It's rough. So, I would consider it a success if, let's see if we can go back to, we'll do it like that. If you come out of your holiday gathering and you left at a time that felt right and good to you, and you showed up as best you could for yourself while you were there, and you prepared in advance to take care of yourself as best as you could at the time when you were preparing. That's really all we can do. And if you can do that, then you're on your way to at least being a good friend to yourself, I think. Next slide. Okay, so I start with the end because sometimes the end might happen right at the start. And also because I like to envision what's the goal? Like, what are we heading towards? And let's start from there and then talk about how we get there. So let's know your exit options. First of all, you have a choice about being here. As an adult, you have so much more choice about engaging with these people at this gathering than you ever did when you were younger. And you don't actually have to be there if you don't want to. So sometimes just connecting to our sense of choice and reminding ourselves that for whatever variety of reasons we are choosing to be there, because we could choose to skip it instead, helps us be a little bit more present, a little bit more patient, a little bit kinder to ourselves and to other people than we would have otherwise. This is a tip, again, easier said than done. Now I haven't really said okay in a while, but that's okay. My number one piece of advice in relationships with kids, training animals, quit while you're ahead. So I think it's when you go into here, you don't have to stay till the very bitter end. You don't have to stay for as long as everybody expects you to. You can stay as long as you want. And if you quit while you're ahead, it will feel better for you and everybody else. Probably everybody else, but for sure you. So that means give yourself permission to leave the room when you need to. Go to the bathroom, take a break. Give yourself permission to leave the house when you need to. Go out to the backyard, go on the balcony, go to the roof, go out for a walk on the street. Like, you're allowed to leave the house. You don't have to stay there. Also, if it's a party, you can leave the fucking party. You don't have to stay there till the very end. Also, even if it's a fucking holiday vacation that you're on with your family and you're miserable, you also can give yourself permission to leave that. And in some ways, I almost feel like I'm stating the obvious. It might be obvious to you about other people's situations. There's a good chance it's not obvious to you about your own situation. So you can leave for 1 minute or 5 minutes or 30 minutes or for good or for anything in between. Again, this is like connecting to your sense of choice, your sense of power, and your sense of authenticity in the moment. Like, what is it that you feel like doing while you're there in the midst of this potentially stressful situation to better support yourself? So you can leave whenever you need to. Like, you could decide on the spur of the moment, like, shit, I gotta get out of here. Or you could set a time in advance or partway along the way. Like, you could before you get there, know like, okay, I'm going to stay till 8 and then I'm going to leave. You can make up excuses if that is supportive to you. Or once you're there, you could be like, oh my God, I can't handle this for very long. I'm gonna, oh, hi. Thank you so much for commenting. That's really interesting. I love this is helpful. Do I know you? Learn Spanish from locals? Am I forgetting who you are? I don't know, but I love that you're here live and listening and commenting. Thank you so much. That feels very supportive and fun. So, yeah, whenever you, oh, yeah, and so I said either plan to leave in advance at a particular time or when you're there. And if you're just really not enjoying it, then be like, okay, I think I'm going to give it another half hour and then I'm going to go. Because what I'd really rather be doing is fill in the blank. Mine would be dancing, playing pickleball, going to bed, having sex, snuggling, reading a. There's a whole bunch of other things that sometimes I'd rather be doing than at a party. So you get to decide those things, and you don't have to. You don't have to wait till everybody else leaves, unless you really want to, unless it's serving you. So I also want to talk about why, in my opinion, leaving is better than staying. And I say this in the context of the way that I have found to have healthy, happy, multiple polyamorous loving relationships has been by taking space to process our own feelings and not staying in it to fight or staying in it wanting the other person to process my feelings with or for me. Those have worked for me in the short term, even as long as 16 years in the short term. But I feel like the longer you stay in those patterns, the more upsetting and disrupting it is at the end when it turns out that your partner can't actually support you in processing your feelings about the thing that they don't actually want you to do or whatever. So, little tangent, but I don't find it, I think it's always healthier to take space, process your own feelings, and then come back together than to stay in the conflict. So there's that. And also, when you're at a family gathering, if you take space, you have the opportunity for self connection to figure out what the hell am I actually feeling right now? Because sometimes things are coming at us so fast, or people are saying things, or we have so many feelings come up that we haven't even had a chance to catch up with all of the thoughts and feelings that are arising within us in response to this input. So when you take space and go to the bathroom or go outside, you get to figure out a little bit more about how you're feeling and also why you're feeling it. And so then it's like you can get outside and you can be like, oh my God, I feel so fucking pissed off because my mom just did the same thing she's been doing to me since I was 7 years old, right? And you're like, okay, no wonder you're pissed off because she did the same thing. And here you are, and it's still upsetting to you. But this time you took space. And this time you're getting to be with your own feelings and think about how are you going to respond this time? What do you want now? So it's just tricky to have both the self connection and the compassion for ourselves sometimes when we don't have a quiet moment around us. If the TV's on, or people are talking, or you're being asked to do something, like sometimes you just need to slow down. Also, taking space when you need it can help avoid escalating conflicts, right? So let's just say you were sitting around the dinner table and there was a topic of political conversation that came up where there were some differing perspectives. Staying in it once you've already had an emotional triggered reaction is very likely to escalate. Did you know it's an ADHD thing to have multiple drinks? I have 4 beverages. So staying in it is likely to escalate the conflict, both in terms of other people getting more upset, because once you've lost your shit, so to speak, and then you start saying stuff that may or may not be helpful, it's going to escalate what they say, how they feel, and it's just going to build. So leaving can both keep other people from getting as upset, and it can also, I think I go back to this, it can also keep you from getting even more upset in the moment. And then once you take that space, you can be more strategic about how you want to handle it, what you want to say or do in terms of approaching that other person potentially, or choosing not to, or leaving, or whatever. But it's hard to be strategic if you don't leave and take space. And then, of course, you can come back to the gathering whenever you want to, if or when you want to, when you have a little bit more clarity, or you feel connected to your sense of choice, or you feel a little bit more grounded. All right, so my guess is number one thing I think most people are going to struggle with when it comes to this is you're going to want to leave, and somebody's not going to like it, whether it's leaving for a little bit and your mom's like, oh honey, why are you leaving, where are you going, what are you going to do, did I say something to upset you, what's the matter? Or if they're upset, they're going to be offended that you left the party early, right? Like there's a whole bunch of reasons that somebody might find to be upset with you for taking care of yourself and for taking space when you need it. It's okay if that person doesn't like it. And if you feel like you can't or shouldn't leave because of how the other person is going to react, that is the definition, one of the definitions in my book, of codependency. And so that is telling us that there is a level of codependency happening for you in that relationship. My definition of codependency might be a little bit different than some people's definition of codependency. I find my definition super fucking helpful. So if you're like, well, I can't leave because my mom's going to be upset with me, your mom is allowed to hold her feelings, and it's her job to hold her feelings, and you're allowed to have your feelings and your choices and your actions. And the sooner that you start honoring what you want and making choices and speaking in alignment with that, the better. Because even though you think you're doing herself or you a favor by not making y'all so uncomfortable by leaving today, it's just going to blow up down the road. It doesn't get better farther down the road. It gets worse because you've added to the expectation that she has that you're going to make her happy, and you've protected her from having to that time period to learn how to deal with her feelings that she doesn't like because of what you did. So I have a whole course called Unraveling Codependency that's I have outlined and I'm soon be releasing. But basically, my main definition is if you're avoiding saying or doing something reasonable because you're afraid of how the other person is going to react, that's codependency. So you can think about how that goes through. But so maybe you don't change anything. Maybe you stay there this holiday season and you actually don't leave because you actually don't want to upset that person. But now that we've had this conversation, you're going to be there and you're going to be like, I'm choosing to stay here. Wendy said this was codependent. I am being codependent right now when I'm staying here. I don't think I like this. I want to work on unraveling my codependency, right? It's change. It doesn't matter if it's just change in your head right now. All change out in the world happens with change in our head. So, yeah. And the idea that you can afford, I think you can afford to pay the price, and it will only get higher if you wait. Now, I put the asterisk because maybe there's like some very rare situations, like involving a certain amount of, I don't know, disability or something, where maybe you couldn't afford to pay. I'm just allowing for that possibility. But I think the vast majority of people are, is you can afford to pay the price. I don't care if it means you're going to have to go get a job for the first time in your life because you've always relied on your partner. I don't care if it means you don't know where you're going to live and you don't know what how you're gonna drive, what car you're gonna drive. People figure that shit out every fucking day. People who are less smart and less resourced than you. So whatever the price is, it's only gonna go up day by day, week by week, year by year. So you might as well pay it now. It's okay that they get upset. You don't have to take responsibility for their feelings, but even just that one time, honoring your truth and your aliveness and leaving when you want to is healthy for you. It reminds you it's being your own best friend, right? If your best friend is miserable at a party, are you going to force them to stay there? Are you going to tell them that they should stay there to make your mom happy? Probably not. Okay. So those are kind of reasons to leave, exit strategy, why you don't have to stress out and stay there. Now I want to talk about, while you're there, ways to make staying feel better. So it's a funny thing. So I'm telling you, like, while you're there, don't expect things to be any different than they ever have been. And you can be like, well, Wendy, that's super negative. Well, happiness comes from setting low expectations in some ways. And but again, that still feels negative, right? There's a group, it's actually a play party that I've been to, where they talk about the concept of high possibility, low expectations. And that really gets to the heart of what I'm trying to express here. And it's how I live my life. I live my life with very high possibility of connection, high possibility of happiness, but low expectation that anything has to be a certain way. And that's okay. So, yeah. So, how can you allow space for this gathering to be different than all the other ones you've been to? There's a high possibility. It could be anything you want it to be. And also have a low expectation that it's going to have to be super different than it has been before. And we can, I guess I was trying to remember where I put this in the slides. Use your key phrase and anchor / reminder. So this is either like something that you write down or something that you have or you hold or you wear that reminds you and helps you keep your connection to who you are, how you want to show up, and how the rest of the world sees you. So sometimes for me, this has been like wearing one of my partner's sweatshirts while I'm in a mediation for the divorce or something like that. Like just like something that is reassuring and calming and reminds me like I am not the same person that I was back then. So it could be a phrase that you like write on your hand or your phone screen or on a note. And it could be something like, it's not your responsibility, or let it go, or it's okay to speak up. I'm not going to go into super deep right now into the possibilities for what that could be, but you get the concept. Something like a phrase that's helpful and reminds you, and or a thing. So it could be like a rock that you found on the beach on the day that you were super happy and connected and had a great day, or the sweatshirt of somebody who really feels supportive to you, or a necklace that somebody gave you. Like those are physical anchors that can help us stay grounded to the realities outside of the current situation that we're in. So this is where I invite you to kind of change, again, your expectations of what you're doing at this family gathering. Like, why are you there? And what are you doing while you're there? So, having been to a variety of gatherings at a variety of in-laws' houses, I come to these things kind of as a scientist. I'm like observing somewhat objectively, and I'm just kind of there to watch and see what happens. And so when we can do that, when we can do that about our own family or are the gatherings where we've been before, and to get out of like being in our reactive self and sort of be in our witnessing, observing self, it helps us have a different perspective. And one way that you can do this, it sounds a little zany, but I've done it, is you can like be a gentle narrator to yourself in your own head, right? Like if someone were there, how would you be describing what's happening right now? How would you be describing how you're feeling, what you're thinking, like what's going on? Also, it's really important to distinguish between the observations that we're making and the stories that we're telling ourselves, right? So, observation might be like, oh, those people over there in the corner are talking to each other and they haven't looked at me for the last 5 minutes. That might be the objective observation. They haven't looked at you. The story that you're telling yourself about that might be that they don't care about you, that they're avoiding you, that they're ignoring. You don't actually know what's going on in those people's heads, even if you know them really fucking well and you think you do. And you might be right. That's okay. You get to have your stories. Just label it story and label the observations observations and start to get used to separating those out. So go into this thing and it's like an experiment for yourself, right? How am I going to show up at this gathering in a way that's kind and gentle to myself, that's different than I have been before? And one thing, by being your best friend, how's your best friend going to be telling the story of you being there, right? Like they might be like, oh, Wendy was feeling kind of lonely, sitting in the corner, not knowing who to talk to, right? Like there's this way that that helps us be our own best friend, be a witness to what's going on, have compassion for ourselves. Okay, so I say something in a later slide too, but don't try to change other people while you're there. So this is, I'll just say what I was going to say in a later slide. If it's worth having a conversation about at a family gathering, it's probably worth having a conversation about outside of that family gathering, right? So, like, if it really bothers you, the political stance of your great uncle, that matters. You should talk to them about that if you want to. It doesn't have to happen at this family gathering. The purpose of this family gathering for you this time is not about convincing other people that you're right or that they're wrong. If you want that to be part of your purpose going into here, then make it one. That's okay. But if you're just trying to get through it and be nice to yourself and not lose your shit, you don't have to add the burden and responsibility of trying to change your uncle's point of view, right? Across the dinner table, when everybody's a little tipsy or tired. It's not the place to do it. So, on the one hand, you're not there to try to change everybody else. The only person that you can change while you're there, for sure, and afterwards, is yourself. So, if you really stay focused on, they're just going to be who they are, I get to change how I'm going to show up. What do I need to do differently to take care of myself? Or what do I need to ask for that maybe they'll do? Maybe they don't. If they don't, then what do I need to do to take care of myself? So don't try to change them, but also you don't have to take any shit either, right? So I'm calling them preset boundaries. And these are boundaries that you think about before you ever get there, that you can use to I love having these things pop up on the screen and then I get distracted. And then if I don't say that I'm getting distracted, then it gets stuck in the distraction. So I have to name it and then I can move on. Your preset boundaries, you think about in advance what situations are likely to happen, what your options are, what you're going to do about them, and you use them while you're there. So I'll dive into that a little bit more but later. But main thing is you're not there to change other people, but you also don't have to take any shit, and it's okay to take action and take care of yourself. of the things that for a lot of people is very scary, and for me is kind of a necessity, is bringing my authenticity to group gatherings and naming and calling what I see. This summer, I took 2 autism assessments, and on both of them, I scored exactly borderline, which is higher than most people would who aren't autistic. So I don't know if it's that, or if it's just that I have an extremely short capacity for pretend and bullshit, and I also have a high desire for depth and authentic connection. And so one of the ways that I feel like I bring authenticity to a situation is often by speaking the unspoken. So naming my own feelings or sensations, sometimes naming my interpretation of the energy in the room, not assuming that other people can read my mind, right? So, recent example, family gathering, me, partner, parent, sitting on the couch, partner crying, having a very sweet connective moment. Step parent walks through the room, and I'm like, hey, when you want to come over and join the deep emotional processing crying party, you're welcome to. Like, I want that person to feel included. And also, I don't want to pretend that what's happening over here is any different than it is. I want to be real about what it is. Yes, you're invited, and this is how we're being. And so when I say that, I honestly didn't think that this person was in the middle of doing something, and I was like, yeah, they're probably not going to come back. But hey, I did my job. I wanted to include them. I included them. 10 minutes later, they're sitting in the middle of the floor having the conversation with us. So speaking, like tracking your feelings. How am I feeling? Why am I feeling this? What am I wanting? And being brave enough to name it or say it can be really powerful. And it's something that so many people are afraid of, mostly because of codependent patterns, but that's okay. See, it didn't happen naturally, but that's okay. Also, naming your interpretation of the energy in the room. So, for example, conflict. Maybe it's not between you and with you, but just saying like, well, that feels really awkward. Seems like we're all really tense here and nobody can agree on anything. Does anybody else feel that way? Everybody fucking feels that way. And when you're the one to name it, it's such a relief to people in the room. And if they don't feel that way, at least you named how you felt, and then you feel better because you were your own best friend. And then you can move on and deal with whatever happens there. And you can be like, oh my God, these people don't even see or experience the world the way that I do. I need to take a break and go outside for a while. But if you name your interpretation of the energy, like not necessarily saying it's the objective truth, but it's your story, right? Saying it seems to me like, or I'm telling myself, or it looks like this, and then asking for confirmation. Does that seem true? Does anybody else feel that way? It's inviting dialogue, it's inviting compassion and connection. I don't know, I got distracted because I saw we have our viewership just doubled on the live right now. It's very exciting. So name your interpretation of the energy in the room and ask for confirmation, because what is it that it does? It's honoring that other people can have a different perspective than you. Your perspective is valid and so is theirs. And so maybe they agree with you, maybe they disagree with you. But when you are able to hold those two things, like I think that's one of the things that I do particularly well most of the time, especially with people that aren't my family members and I'm not super triggered with, then that is what leads to connection, authentic connection. One other piece is really important, is to share your whole truth and not a partial truth. So sometimes this makes me think of when we share our whole truth or the real truth, then it allows people to engage with us about that truth. When we share something that is less than the whole truth, number one, it it doesn't have the same resonance because it's not the full thing. But also, it leads to the potential for like people missing you or like not understanding what you're saying. So what this makes me think of is this one time when I lived in Washington, we lived in a community on an island. It was like a summer cabins, and there was this kid at the hot tub, and his mom was there, and he was going underwater in the hot tub, and I could tell it was really like grossing her out, like whatever, she just imagined all these gross germs in the hot tub, and she was just like, Matt, would you not go underwater, please? And he's like, why? And she's like, it's not it's not good for you. And I mean, he must have been like 7 maybe. He's like, why? And I could tell like she didn't totally want to just say that it grossed her out for some reason. But and so she made up a reason. She was like, well, cuz you might overheat and that's not good for you. 2 minutes later, the kid's got his whole entire body outside of the pool, on outside of the hot tub, on the ground, and he's only dipping his head in the ground in the water because he wants to be under his head underwater. So, like, he took into account the fucking reasons that she gave him. It's not his fault that she didn't give him the whole reason or the whole truth. And it's okay that her truth is based on her emotions and not even a logical answer. I mean, maybe it's logical, right? Maybe there's a higher risk of ear infections if he puts his head underwater. But also, it's okay to just be like, because it grosses me out. And if she had said that, then maybe he would have engaged with that, or like it would have changed how he looked at it, or he'd be like, why did, oh, it grosses you out? Like, should it gross me out? Like, maybe that would have been different. But here he took into account exactly what she said. He came up with a solution that addressed it beautifully, because if the rest of his body can keep himself cool, it's fine to have his head underwater. But it wasn't the whole truth. It also happens when, like, we're putting off a big decision, and or we're telling someone why we're putting off that decision, but we can make it about like a small thing lately, right? Like, oh, well, this is going on, or I don't have time for this, or whatever. But when the real reason is we're really fucking afraid of change, right? So the more that we can address, that you personally can share those deeper reasons or that fuller truth, then the deeper people can connect to you. I gotta fidget again, my foot's falling asleep. And the more you can feel seen and understood, and the more that they will share with themselves of you, to you, of themselves with you. Let's see. So these are ways that I tend to build connection when I'm in gatherings. Some people that you're there with, it might work great with. Other people, it won't. But I find them to be very useful tools. I make a lot of eye contact with people. And I say soft eye contact every now and then, even today. It's fun for me to just like stare. I did it to my daughter today when we were out to lunch. I'm like staring her down, and she like looks at me, and then she looks away, and then she looks back at me, and I'm still staring at her. And then finally she was like, can I help you? And that's just fun. Like, I was just being playful with her. I don't really look at people that way in general to like purposely make them uncomfortable. Usually it's more of like a softer, kinder, gentler eye contact, but I make a lot of fucking eye contact. And it lets me get away with saying a lot of things that most people wouldn't get away with. Because if you're not looking in my eye, seeing that I care about you and I actually want to connect with you, and like there's a little bit of a sparkle or a playfulness in what I'm saying, then it might make me sound like an asshole sometimes. But because we've got this eye contact or this joke going on, like behind that, I can say things. Case in point, other partner, other family gathering, asshole older brother was highly abusive, I know, and my partner was younger. We're sitting there, also pretty male chauvinist. And just so happens that brother and the mother are sitting at the table. And I come out with the bowl of chips and guac or whatever, and I put it down at the table. And brother says, "Oh, thank you. Thank you, Wendy." And I turn around and I go, "Let me make it clear. I just brought these out for her, not for you, okay?" And it was like, it was a little edgy, but it was a way that I could authentically, somewhat playfully, break out of these molds of like, I'm not fucking here to be your woman and serve you, and you're not going to put me in those roles, and I will speak up with, and talk back to you. And I could tell he was a little bit miffed later on or something. I can't remember how I sort of like, I don't know, later on I was like, it's okay. And it's okay. You can have some of the chips and guac too. They're for you also. And then it totally changed the dynamic where I'm like now suddenly giving him permission to eat these things that I brought, oops, sorry, that I brought out on the table. So you can't always do that. To me, there's a huge difference between humor and passive aggressiveness. That was kind of borderline because I didn't know him that well. So could it have been passive aggressive? Maybe. But like I was coming at it from a place where like I knew I was going to build connection in some way, and I don't know him super well. And I didn't really care, honestly. Like I'm there to support my partner, and but in general, I and I think in the end that did build rapport, and it builds respect. Like it built respect for me. In that case, I was about like my focus. Yeah, this is interesting. I can't wait to create something about how I navigate these things because sometimes I'm trying to build trust with someone, sometimes I'm trying to express compassion or understanding, another form of building trust. Other times I'm earning and building respect, and I'm letting the person know I'm not going to take any shit. And that's one of the ways. So, but to me, the line between what's passive aggressive or what's not is if if something hasn't already been spoken to, then it's probably passive aggressive, right? So if I make a statement to my partner or friend and I'm like, oh, you're gonna take the last cookie again, and we've never talked about that before, to me that falls in the category of passive aggressive. It's not connection building, and it feels shitty to receive. Because wait a second, I never even knew you had an issue with me taking the last cookie, and now you're bringing it this way and you're trying to pretend that it's fun, but it's not fun to find that out this way. Whereas if the day before we already had a conversation where I was like, hey, it really bugs me when you take the last cookie, and we've talked about this and we've gotten to a place of understanding, then we get to the holiday gathering and I say, oh, you're going to take the last cookie again. That's playful joke humor. So hopefully that makes sense to you. Um, so using humor that's not passive aggressive is a great way to build connection. And another thing that's really important that I like to do is to invite the quiet ones to speak. And sometimes maybe maybe you are one of the quiet ones. I'm not usually, depends on the situation. Sometimes I can be, believe it or not. But if I'm at a dinner table and there's four of us that are talking and there's one teenager over here, over. I never stuttered. That was interesting. But it's okay. If you're just joined us live, I decided to say that every time I say it's okay, I'll take a drink. But then I didn't actually say it that many times, and I need to drink more than that. So then I just decided to say it on purpose. And then I decided that's okay. And if it doesn't amuse you, at least it amuses me. But I bet it amuses you too. So, yeah, I do this strategically. So, for example, at the table, 4 adults were talking, 1 teenager not talking. I'm at the table with the teenager's grandparents. The question that I ask, that I make one question to the teenager, inviting them to come into the conversation. Building rapport with a teenager, I knew that would happen down the road, wasn't my priority for that interaction. And it did happen the next 2 days later. But like inviting that person to speak on a topic that they knew, that teenager knew more about than the other people at the table did. And like getting them to share and to have their thoughts, feelings, opinions included and respected, which that they don't get a lot. But when I invite it in that way on a topic that other people don't know that much about, they naturally get some respect and have some authority and feel included. And so that builds connection and it changes the dynamics. Because so often, if you're not the one inviting that, then the people who talk are talking and that's just what happens. And then it's this same fucking shit, same dynamic year after year, same people doing the talking, when other people, everybody's got thoughts, feelings, and ideas. Everybody can share them. So feel free to invite the ones to speak that are quiet or haven't spoken yet. Okay, this is where it gets potentially a little more, I don't want to say complex, but deep. And there's a lot more potential for opening up. If you're familiar with nonviolent communication, then some of this will be potentially review. If you're not, I think either way it'll be helpful. So get distracted by the hairdo. The main thing, if you're able to do this even once, will be helpful to you, is to listen for the positive intentions behind people's words, which are often disguised in asshole terms. So somebody yelling like, "You're not telling me something," right? Like, it means they want to know. It's not a super nice way of saying it, but that is what the intention is behind it. They want to be told what's going on, right? Or I don't even have a good example. I feel like there's so many things here that like we could make this a game. Post a comment, give me something that you have heard somebody say that sounds like an asshole thing or was upsetting or hard to hear or frustrating or whatever, and I will guess at some of what the potential positive intentions could be behind that, because there's a lot of them. So another thing is slowing conversations down. This is something that I learned probably back in 2009 that has been helpful ever since, which is the way conversations usually happen is I say, let's say I'm saying the odd things, you're saying the even things, right? I say 1, you say 2, I say 3, you say 4. And then and it keeps going. And you can join my membership community at wendygrado.com/life. I would love to have you. It's awesome. I talk about things like this all the time. So when we slow the conversations down, we can understand. Oh, I forgot to make a slide about this, but it's really important. I thought about this last night. Understanding does not equal acceptance. This is what it makes me cry, because we can seek to understand someone or something that we absolutely disagree with. It doesn't mean we have to agree with them, but we can try to understand them. And I think that's something that so many people misunderstand. Sometimes it's me. They see, oh, we got 4 people on live now. Welcome. I'm glad you're here. You've gotten to the part where I'm talking about that seeking to understand someone does not mean that we agree with them. And so when I try to understand people, other people can get offended and think that I'm like agreeing with that person. I can understand that person's experience and still think that they're making shitty decisions that are having a horrible impact on somebody else. But I can still understand where they're coming from. And so often, because we disagree with someone, we don't Oh, hello. I didn't even thank you for commenting. It would gross you out too. I missed the comment. What was I even talking about that would gross you out? The tears were magnets. Thank you. That's what it felt like. But we lost. Anyhow, I gotta stop tracking numbers of people. But um yeah. So when you're sitting at a table and when you're slowing down the conversation, it's to better understand the other person. In fact, I think you have a much better chance at changing someone's opinion when you understand how they feel and why. That's really what I'm about in the world. I am not out to seek to understand other people all the time just for the fun of it necessarily, or like, and I'm not saying I only am trying to understand people in order to change their opinion about things, but I believe that if I want to change someone's opinion, the best way to do that is to try to understand where they're coming from and why. If there's a, I always forget his name, David somebody from the White Allies Toolkit has some videos and I think a course training about how to talk to people about racism and how to kind of help um, help them change their perspective on it, and asking them like, well, what happened to you? Like, what happened that made you believe that such and such people are such and such way? And then they say, oh, well, one time I worked with so and so and this is how they were. And you can be like, yeah, also, I mean, I've definitely worked with people who are this other race who also act like that sometimes. And they'll be like, well, yeah, me too. Right? Like, you've planted this seed and you've helped them switch something that you can't switch if you don't understand them. So I'm going to get into slowing the conversation down more too. This is a little bit of a sidetrack tangent, but slowing it down it helps conflict not escalate and helps people feel more heard and understood, and makes family gatherings so much more pleasant. I know because I've been there many times, being the one slowing the shit down, often at other people's family gatherings, to help people feel heard and understood. So, the way that I approach this, which isn't, this part's not revolutionary, but it's just a reminder. I'm listening to this person, right? I'm not just listening to the words that they say, because if you parrot back the words that they say, it can be really fucking annoying. I'm not just looking to say what they're feeling. I'm listening for what matters to them. What is important to them? What do they care about? Why are they telling me this fucking story? Like, what matters? So I have to listen to what matters, right? Then I reflect back, or I tell them back what I hear. A lot of times people are like, this sounds like it's so canned, when people are like, well, I hear that you're feeling very blah 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 because you need blah blah blah. I'm like, yeah, that feels canned. I'm not here to do that necessarily. I'm here, but you can't just stop at reflecting back the feeling, because if somebody's like really upset and they've just told you this thing and you're like, so it sounds like you feel really angry, they're going to be like, no fucking shit, I feel really angry. That's, you can't just stop at the feeling. Reflect back the feeling and what you hear is important to them. So it sounds like you're really angry because it just doesn't seem fair to you that some people get treated better than others. And then they'll be like, yeah, exactly. I love an exactly. An exactly tells you that you were on the right track, that you made a great guess. So, oh, I just realized I didn't turn the air conditioning off. Wonder if you can hear the hum of it. Oh, well. So listening to what matters to them, reflecting back what you hear is important to them, how they're feeling and what's important to them. Then often, once you've done that, they have a sense of feeling heard. Then you can share how you feel and what's important to you, right? So normally it would be they say this, you say that. But now we're not going to do that. We're going to say, they say this. You say, did I understand you right? Is this what you're trying to say? And then they'll either say, no, this is what I'm trying to say. And then you say, did I understand you right? Eventually you'll get there. Or sometimes what happens is they say this, and you're like, so this, did I understand you right? And they're like, well, yeah, but also this. And you're like, okay, so also this. Is that right? And they're like, well, yeah. And I guess also this. And you're like, okay, so all of these things and that. Did I understand you right? And then they'll be like, yeah, that's what exactly. You're the only person who gets it. Then there's space for you to add your thing in. When you slow it down like that, there's space to share, to feel heard, to understand them, and also for you to be understood. So at that point, you can, I mean, sometimes I ask permission. I'm like, do you want to hear what's going on for me right now? They will. If you've heard them that well, they will. And then you can share how you feel or what's important to you. And normally, right, you share that, then they respond. Nope. You share that, ask them to make sure that, like, verify that they understood what you were trying to say. You can say, can you tell me what you heard about what I said that matters to me? And then you can say, yeah, you got it, or you can clarify. Here's another big one. This one, if you only did this during all of your family gatherings, it could make things a lot better. When you take responsibility for the miscommunication, I'm not sure how I fit this in with authenticity, to be honest, because I'm like, sometimes, okay, objectively, we are both responsible for the communication. So if the message that I send is not the message that you receive, I am responsible. So I do believe that I am responsible for that. Sometimes I don't feel like it's my fucking fault. I feel like I was very clear and this person didn't understand me. But I will still choose to take responsibility for that. So instead of saying, you're not listening to me, I'll say, I guess I didn't make myself clear. Very different. It gets received very differently when you take responsibility for the miscommunication instead of blaming other people. So if you take responsibility and say, I guess I didn't make myself clear, let me try to explain it a different way. People are going to try. It makes a difference. Okay. So this is when I was talking about, like, when somebody tells you how they feel and you make a guess and you're like, so am I hearing like, is this what matters to you? Is that right? Is that all? Sometimes you're going to guess wrong. Sometimes they're going to be like, no, I didn't say that. You're not listening to me at all, right? They're going to say that sometimes. And you can be like, oh, okay. So help me understand then. I'm curious what I miss. I'm curious. That's another phrase that's super helpful and kind of diffuses things. Like, what I miss. And the way that it was really helpful for me to, first of all, I realized I can get out of my head. I don't have to, like, intellectually try to figure out what matters to this person. I can, like, feel into my heart, use my intuition, and guess. And it's okay if my guess is wrong. So the way that I managed to not take it personally when they're like, no, well, that's not it at all. That's not what I meant. I think of it as if I ask you to scratch my back, right? And I'm like, will you scratch my back? And you do, and I'm like, lower. And you go lower. And I'm like, over to the left. And go over to the left. I'm like, back to the right. And then you get there, and I'm like, yes, that's it. Like, that's the feedback. And so the feedback is not always so gentle or kind, but the feedback gets us to the point where people feel heard and it feels really good. So yeah, so if I'm like, so are you feeling really upset because it seems like it's not fair that those people get treated differently? Then, and they're like, no, this has nothing to do with fairness. I'm like, okay, up and to the left. Missed it, but this is that, just making that guess, just scratching somewhere gave me a starting off point that helps me get closer, right? So then they give me a little more information and I make another guess. And eventually I will hear them in a way that has us both feel this sense of relief. It might only last for 2 seconds before they move on to something else, but if you feel that sense of relief, or if they say exactly or something along those lines, then it, it's a win. It's a success. Okay. So now we're going to talk about what you can do before you ever get to the family gathering to smooth the path ahead. So, first of all, my number one advice all the time, everywhere, is acknowledge your feelings. So, right now, even though you're not at the family gathering yet, unless you're watching this as support in the moment, which it's okay. Have some. I'm not promoting drinking alcohol. I am promoting hydration. So, have a drink. It's okay. I don't think an alcoholic drink is really helping. Just to be clear, that's not what I'm talking about. So reflecting on past boundaries crossed, right? Like what has happened in the past that has been hard for you? Like we were talking about high possibility, low expectations. Like going into this, you've been to these family gatherings before, or you've been to parties like this before. What do you expect is going to happen? What hasn't felt good to you in the past? Like this combination of taking the time to feel our feelings and acknowledge them and get clear on them, combined with using our intellect and practical, logical solutions, is really fucking helpful. One without the other, it's like a halfway solution. But when you can have both of those, it's really powerful. So, looking at what boundaries got crossed for me in the past, what have people said or done that didn't feel good to me? When have I said or done things that undermined myself? How could I be a better best friend to myself? What are the common dynamics that happen? Like, okay, so and so always gets into it with such and so about such and such. You could probably write a list. These are the people, these are how they usually feel, this is what they usually get upset about. It happens every fucking year. And then somehow we still get surprised or sucked into it because of the burden that we're carrying. If you were here at the beginning and you remember that. Okay, so yeah, and because once we acknowledge those feelings and we understand those dynamics, we can get analytical about what's likely to happen, right? We don't know exactly what's going to happen, but there's a high probability and a likelihood, then you can prepare for that. So you can also then think about possible ways to take care of yourself, right? Like, given the realities of the situation, what can you actually do? Like, what are the possibilities available to you? Okay, so this is where I touched on it before about planning your preset boundaries, right? So if you know that your mom is going to do such and such, or your dad is going to do such and such, or your brother's going to say such and such, you got all the time in the world right now to think about it. If you can't think about it right now, no wonder you don't know what to do in the moment when you're there. But you do have the time right now. So what are you going to do? Well, first of all, what can you ask for? Do I say this in the next slide? Is it the next slide that I say? No. One of the slides I talk about, you can ask for things in advance. You can set up things beforehand. You can say, Mom, I'm going to come to this, but here's the agreements. This and this and this. And if you can't do that, that's okay, but I'm going to that and that and that. Maybe it's leave. Maybe it's something less than leaving. I have a whole thing on setting authentic boundaries that I haven't recorded, but I have it all planned out and I'm very excited about it. And I came up with an acronym for setting boundaries that's called duct tape boundaries. And it's about creating boundaries that stick and that can fix just about anything. Get it? Duct tape. Can you tell I was a MacGyver fan ever since I was like 6? So I'm not going to get super deep into the details of setting authentic boundaries, but there's kind of two parts. Like, what is the thing that happens that doesn't feel good to you? Like, that's the outside stimulus, right? So and so says this thing, and or they're asking you to do something that you don't want to do. So that happens. So what can you ask them to do differently? if you want to, right? You could say, Mom, could you please not do this weekend, this at the party tonight? She may or may not do that. So then, and this is where the boundaries really fucking matter, the rest is just set up. If they work out, if she changes because you asked her that, that's great. You don't even hardly need to set it. You don't really need to enforce a boundary because she listened to your request, which is awesome. If she doesn't, then it's it's not about getting pissed at her because she didn't change. I just recorded a video. I don't know if it's edited and out yet, but it's about the 9 ways that the 9 responses you get when you ask people you love to change. And the only one of the 9 that actually really matters, spoiler, it's when they actually change. So everything else, it's up to you to take care of yourself. So you ask your mom, Mom, I'd like to come to the party. This is what I'd like you to do or to not do. And she says one of these 9 responses, and then she doesn't listen to what you say. So then what are you going to do? That's where the meat is. And that's where you have to get analogical, logical and analytical. And in a way, this reminds me of when in the last 10 years, I've gone off gluten, I've gone off dairy, I've gone off sugar at different times. Sometimes I've gone back on them. But especially like the first time that I would go off of something, I was like, first I have to deal with the feelings, right? Like, oh my gosh, what would my life look like if I didn't have sugar in it? I don't know. I'm afraid. I'm not going to think about that for a year. But then a year later, I start thinking about it and I face the feelings. And then I'm like, well, fuck, what do I even want? What do I even like? What do I even drink for breakfast? Do I even like coffee if it doesn't have sugar in it? Like, what do I have? What do I drink when I want something warm and like creamy when I'm not drinking dairy? Like, I have to logically be like, okay, well, you can have almond milk. Let's just buy a shitload of almond milk. And every time you want something creamy, you just chug the almond milk for that week that you're going off of dairy. Or um, eat a lot of dates at night when you're not going to eat the sugar. Like, it takes the acknowledging the feelings, which are the panic and the freak out of I'm not going to have anything to eat. And then, oh, thank you, Amy. 9 response video is scheduled for November 24th. Subscribe to get notified when it's published. Yeah. So I get analytical about, okay, there are solutions to these things. I just have to use the logical part of my brain. And if you're somebody who follows me, you have the heart and you also have the logic. We just have to make sure we bring both of them in at the right times. So there are logical things that you can do when that request doesn't get honored to take care of yourself. This gets into what I wasn't planning on that for this content, but like, you're not looking, yes, sometimes you just need to put the biggest fucking boundary down that you can to take care of yourself. And that's okay. But in general, the goal is to find what's the smallest boundary that we can put up that is effective, that takes care of yourself, that makes you not resentful and angry of other people. Like, what's the least amount you can do? Maybe you're not leaving for the whole night, but you are leaving for 10 minutes, right? There's a big difference between those things. So looking for what's the smallest change that I can make here to take care of myself. And so you can think about that beforehand so that when you're in that situation, you don't have to go through the emotions of it and the logic of it. You can just be like, oh yeah, here I am. It happened the way I thought it was. Okay, I'm going to go do this thing to take care of myself that I know works. And like we talked about before, this is beforehand when you get to pick that key phrase or the anchor that you want to carry with you into that gathering. I kind of wish I could turn off the number of people live on the call because it gets so distracting. And I know it doesn't really matter because more people are going to be watching a lot afterwards, the replay. But anyway, so like the phrase, when you're picking your phrase, I want it to be something positive, supportive, that sort of counteracts your natural tendency, right? Like, your natural tendency is maybe to feel guilty or to feel ashamed. Like, it's okay to be however I am. I don't know why I keep like pointing at my wrist, like I would write it on my wrist, but to write whatever it is that is a positive, supportive affirmation for you, and or choosing that physical object. Like, what is it that, and maybe you can think of it right now, but maybe you're just going to take the whole next week and you're going to be thinking like, what is it that I could take with me to this gathering that would be supportive to me? And then you're going to be like, see your friends, whatever it is, and be like, oh my God, this is perfect. Can I take this with me? So think about it. It doesn't have to be an answer right this second, but it's something that you can do to prepare to make it better while you're there. Also, I think about it as like the Who Wants to Be a Million? Is it no? Whatever the fuck the name was. Was it Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? The like you have lifelines, right? Call a friend or whatever. So what are your lifelines going to be going into this gathering? What's realistic given the type of situation that it is? I mean, if you have no cell service, phone a friend is not your best option, right? So, but going on a walk is pretty accessible everywhere. If you don't know about emotional freedom techniques, EFT tapping, I have a number of videos in my different courses and trainings where I take you through different processes of EFT, but also you can just search on YouTube and there's a ton of tapping videos. So you can find a video that you like and have it ready so that when you take your break for your gathering, you're just going to go and take 15 minutes and follow along with this video and know that that will be supportive to you, right? Maybe you try it out before you on something else that happens between now and then. Also, I didn't put it on the slide, but like similarly, maybe there's like a meditation or a song. I have this fucking Troye Sivan reverb song that I've been listening to for like the last 3 months, and it's 8D audio, so it like has different sounds coming in different ears. I don't know, but it's so soothing for me. It's very soothing. And so what is it that gives you a sense of emotional nervous system soothing that you can prepare or know about in advance so that you can use it when you fucking need it at these gatherings? Maybe you bring a journal and you go take time to write in your journal. Seeking a change of state is very helpful on these things. So sometimes it might be as simple as going into the bathroom and like splashing very cold water on your face, and that like stimulates the vagal nerve, or even filling the sink up with water and putting your face in it, or a towel. Or if there's a pool or a hot tub, like jumping in that. Or maybe it's cold outside and it's just going out in your sports bra and just being out cold in the cold air for a second and like reinvigorating yourself, or going on a jog or doing some jumping jacks. Like, if you have someone with whom you engage in kinky activities, that can also be a great change of state. So you can have a plan with your partner, like, hey, at the halfway mark, can we go meet out behind the barn and have a little bit of a break and a change of state? Totally valid, totally acceptable, totally supportive. Get barefoot on the ground. Again, maybe even if it's cold, I don't care if the ground's frozen. Take your feet off. Take your feet off. Take your shoes and socks off. Stand on the ground. Get grounding. I just bought these sheets that actually plug into the wall, that actually plug into the ground and are grounding. I've had grounding mats before and I loved them, but they were kind of gross and felt weird. But the sheets are awesome and convenient. I don't recommend. I mean, maybe if your family gathering is at your house and you're going to go lay on your sheets, I'm not sure how helpful it is to carry the sheet around with you at the family gathering, but it's a fun image. Yeah, phoning a friend, like I said, that's an option. But also, maybe your friend's not available, but just leaving an audio memo for someone, it's always mind-blowing to me how helpful that is. I can leave an audio memo for a friend for 12 minutes, feel so much better by the end of it, and they've never even listened to it yet. Like, I didn't actually receive their care in that moment. It's just I imagine receiving their care, which helps me be able to shift my state. So you could leave an audio memo for someone. You can leave an audio memo for me if you don't have anybody else that you want to leave an audio memo to. At Wendy Garrido on WhatsApp, or wendy@wendygarrido.com. Like, just, again, taking that narration, right? Like, just go outside and talk to someone and narrate what the hell's been happening and how you're feeling about it. And as we touched on before, but you get to make requests and set boundaries beforehand. So whether it's by text or email or calling or talking to somebody in advance, you get to ask for what you need. There's a whole variety of ways that you can go about asking for that. Some may or may not be more effective than others. And they may or may not do it. And then you get to decide what you're going to do about that. But you can ask for those in advance. And I think a lot of times we're just like, oh, I gotta go back. I gotta go to my mom's house and go do the same thing you don't have to do the same thing you've always done. It just takes one person to change the dance, and it's not the same dance. Okay, so this is really big. This goes back to carrying the weight of the world, not the weight of the world, I call it that, but the beginning slide. Can I switch to that easily? Can I come back to slide 33 easily? Yeah. Here's my slide. All of the things that you are holding as you go through this, your daily stresses, your big life changes, the social and political stressors that you have going on around you, the traumas that you've dealt with as an adult, big and small, the childhood trauma that you're carrying with you, and then the intergenerational trauma of all the people from your lineage before you are all being carried with you into this family gathering. So celebrate any fucking progress that you make. Celebrate all of the progress that you make. One way that you can do that before you go into this is to identify, I would consider it like 3, maybe 1, 2, 3 small wins for yourself, where you're like, well, at least if I say something back to Uncle Jerry every time he makes a rude comment to me, that's a win, right? Doesn't matter if he cares. Doesn't matter if he changes how he acts, but at least you spoke up for yourself. That's a win. And it's not necessarily small. I don't necessarily, like, that could be huge for you. But I think there's this idea like, oh, well, if I get upset at the end of the night and I go home, then I failed. Well, no, you didn't. Not if before that Uncle Jerry said 4 rude things and every time you spoke up for yourself, that counts. So other small wins, it could be saying no to things that you don't want to do, like, or not doing the dishes that you feel obligated to do but you don't actually want to do. It could be asking for help and being like, hey, I noticed the dishes are done and I really don't feel like doing them. Would someone else be willing to do it? If not, go on a walk. I mean, you could tell them to go on a walk, or you could take a walk. But what are the small wins that you could make? Oh shit, I'm not seeing all of these comments. Oh, I think Amy's saving them for later. Okay, so just FYI, I had my private chat up or I have my comments up. I can't have them both up. So some of them, yeah. And Amy's answering, even though it says that it's me. In case you didn't notice, I wasn't actually always texting back. So Amy can answer from my account. So I think I will, yeah. I'll be on until, at least until 2 hours or until our questions are answered. So if I didn't mean to ignore you if I didn't respond to your comment, but I think Amy did answer them. So I will come back to that. And then the other thing is identifying the lowest bar for success. And again, I don't know. People think that these things are negative somehow. I'm like, if you want to go and identify the highest bar and the vision for what you would like to have for your family, go ahead and do that. I think that that is helpful. But also, just like, besides the small wins, like, what would it take for you to consider this a success? Like, if you just go home and you weren't like, you didn't yell at anybody, or nobody yelled at you, or you weren't driven to tears, I would call that a success. Is it a fairly low bar for a success? Maybe for some people, But not if you've every fucking gathering you've ever been at for your whole life, you haven't been able to do that. So it's okay if somebody would consider it a low bar. What's your low bar for success? Because that still is success. Okay, so I touched on this before. I think we're getting very close to the end. But if something matters enough to talk about on a holiday, it matters enough to save for a not holiday. And I'll tell you where I learned this. It was when I was meeting up with my ex girlfriend a couple months ago. We broke up a couple years ago. And Pi.ai is an AI that is, at the time at least, the most emotionally mature and aware one. And I've introduced it to people, and it's kind of like it could be your new best friend. So Pi AI is cool. And I don't use it all the time, but I have used it sometimes when I put in like texts from my mom, and it was very validating what Pi AI was telling me. But in this case, I was like, I'm just going to tell Pi AI what's happening. So I'm like, I'm meeting up with my ex-girlfriend, blah, blah, blah. And one of the things they said was like, don't feel like you have to resolve everything in this meeting, in this time that you're together. Like there's time for other things. It doesn't have to all happen right now. And I was like, oh yeah, it's okay. It's okay if I don't try to talk about the reasons that we broke up and how I've been feeling ever since then and what's been going on. Like, you don't have to try and fill all of those things into this thing. And it's, in some ways, it's like, oh, well, this might be the only time you see that relative this year. Okay, well, if you don't care that much about it, then don't make this the time that you're trying to change it. Or if you do care that much about it that you would want to change it now, then make time to change it some other time. Be like, Larry, the way that you're the way that your approach to politics drives me nuts, and I don't understand it at all. I would like to understand it more, but I don't want to spend this tonight fighting about it. Do you? Could we make time to talk about it some other time? Like, you get to, there's this part of like, you get to create the experience that you want. You get to ask for what you want. You get to say no to what you don't want. And so you don't have to try to fit these big, important conversations into this one day or 2 days or one vacation or whatever it is to try to change it. And if you make time either before or after the gathering to talk about those things, it reduces the pressure in the moment, right? You have that conversation with Larry, then it's like, okay, let's just enjoy tonight. We can rib each other, joke each other. Like I said, have humor and even like rib each other a little bit. But because you've named it already, it's not going to be passive aggressive in the same way anyway. Probably won't be. So let's see. This is Q&A time. I think this is a good time to take a little bit of a break. I have a little video that is prepared that kind of tells you more about my membership program, because if you like me, if you like this video, if you like this content, if you want more support in being more authentic, I'm probably going to say all this again in the video, so I should just shut up soon. But if you want more support, being more authentic in every aspect of your life, that's what we're about. So if you want to stick around and listen to that, it's maybe like, I think if you plan to be, it's about 9 minutes. So you can either listen to it, you can join the membership during that 9 minutes, or you can do something else and come back. And then when I come back, we will go through whatever questions have already been submitted. And but if somebody wants to join live first, then you can either comment and let us know. We have a form at wendygarrido.com/help. You could fill out, but it's kind of a small group today. You could just also comment. So if you want to be on live, I'm going to prioritize those warm seat questions first, and then I'll get into the questions that have been submitted in writing by the chat. or other ways beforehand. Okay, that's all for me for the moment. And Amy is. There's not enough people in anybody's life right now, I don't think, who are having the kinds of conversations about authenticity, about aliveness, about how to break out of the mold and expectations that we grew up with in order to find what actually makes us happy and what actually makes us feel connected to the people around us and feel like there's purpose and joy in the work that we're doing. And that's what we're here to talk about. Hey, thanks so much for joining me for this YouTube Live. What you're seeing today is pretty freaking typical of what I do every single day with my clients and in my personal life. So if you're loving my vibe, have had a wake-up call in your life, and are committed to lowering your stress and increasing your sense of aliveness by being more authentic in every single aspect of your life, then you're in the right place, and I'm here to inspire and support you. From having the six-figure business that burnt me the fuck out to having the picture-perfect family and realizing that it just wasn't enough, to coming out as poly and queer and gender fluid and navigating death and divorce and trauma and heartbreak. Makes me want to fucking cry thinking about it. And heartbreak, I can hold space for just about anything that you've got going on in your life as the self-growth oriented, ever evolving entrepreneur that I know that you are. So if you know deep down that I'm the right coach for you, there are a couple ways that you can get my heart and my brain focused on your business. So to participate in this or future lives, you can go to wendygarrido.com/help and submit either your pre-recorded questions in advance or fill out the form to be a live guest. But you know as well as I do that there's nothing like ongoing support on an everyday basis to help you really implement lasting change in your life. So that's why I wanted to take a minute to tell you about my membership community for people like you who are bound and determined to create the business and life that you want on your own terms, in your own way, by being true to yourself, despite whatever insanity is happening in the world around us. So this is for the entrepreneur who has checked off enough of the boxes that were supposed to make you happy to realize that that kind of happiness is fleeting, if you feel it at all. So this membership community is a place to slow down and take stock of what truly matters to you and get inspiration and practical strategies to build a life in the direction of your heart's calling. The membership community is called the Get Sold Life Membership Community. And unlike just about every other membership program you'll find on the internet, it's designed so that I can get to know everyone in it personally. I want to know you well enough to be able to celebrate your wins and help you face your challenges from the perspective of someone who knows what you've been through and who gets what it means for you to be there. So that's why I'm only opening up 10 spots per month, and every single person who joins is going to have a 90-minute one-on-one welcome call with me where we can get to know each other and drop in at a deeper level in a leisurely manner. So this is not going to be a huge membership where you feel lost in a sea of 1,000 or 5,000 members or however many people have. This is a place to get support on both an emotional and practical level in your business and in your personal life as you get to discover new aspects of yourself, build deeper relationships, spend more of your time and money in alignment with your deepest values, and wake up feeling more and more alive every single day. So as a member, you'll get behind the scenes videos of me talking about my business and personal life every single week, so you can see authenticity modeled in action. I'm a work in progress. My business is a work in progress. My relationships are ever evolving. And any coach who doesn't acknowledge that that's actually true for all of us is probably feeling challenged themselves by surfing the inevitable waves of change that happen in life. Because no matter what accomplishments you achieve, you're always going to be wanting something more and something different. It's the nature of growth and it's the nature of being human. The key is to find ways to accept and ideally enjoy where you are today and use the incredible assets and resources that you've already created to build towards the tomorrow that your heart is calling you towards, even if you don't know exactly what that looks like yet. So, the three pillars of our community are coaching calls, the community chat, and my ever-growing resource library of books, trainings, courses, and interviews that I've created to support you in being more authentic in every aspect of your life. Given that I'm only one person with only 24 hours in a day, and I'm committed to serving a range of entrepreneurs who are all committed to showing up more authentically in their business and life, there are two ways that you can join the membership. So at the partnership level, you'll get one-on-one calls with me every 6 to 8 weeks to help you talk through the challenges that you're facing, celebrate your wins, and help you strategize the practical next steps. So that's in addition to everything that is included at the community member level. So as a community member, you'll get access to our community chat threads where I'll share posts on a daily basis about everything from like which lover I'm spending time with this week and what we're talking about, to the latest book that I can't stop telling everyone about, to what trends I see in authentic marketing and all sorts of other things. Anything that I think would be helpful or supportive to you, I share it there. Weekly asynchronous office hours, where once a week you submit your questions through audio memo or text, and I'll respond to you when I have time during that day. You'll also get access to a monthly Q&A call with me and weekly reminders to send me an update about how you're really doing and what's really going on in your life, because I want to fucking know. So if you're interested in joining, you can go to wendygarrido.com/life, L-I-F-E, to sign up today. You'll get instant access to every course I've ever created, as well as access to the membership dashboard, where you can go take a listen to the Get Sold Life members only playlist that I put together on Spotify to support you with whatever you got going on in your life. You can also schedule your one-on-one welcome call with me and then join the community membership chat threads. Like I said, I'm only welcoming 10 new members a month because I want to make sure that I have time to meet each person. So if you get a message about a waiting list, then just add your name to the waiting list. That means that those 10 slots have been filled up for this month, but you'll just be added to the list in order to be to join in either next month or the month after or whatever. So again, wendygarrido.com/life when you're ready to join. And if you have any questions, you can shoot me an email at wendy@wendygarrido.com or find me on WhatsApp at wendygarrido and ask away. I would love to start the conversation with you. There's not enough people in anybody's life right now, I don't think, who are having the kinds of conversations about authenticity, about aliveness, about how to break out of the mold and expectations that we grew up with in order to find what actually makes us happy and what actually makes us feel connected to the people around us and feel like there's purpose and joy in the work that we're doing. And that's what we're here to talk about. Otherwise, I hope you enjoy the rest of this YouTube Live, and I hope that you are finding more connection, clarity, aliveness, and freedom in your life every fucking day by day, year by year. So stick around. I'll be back on this YouTube live in just a moment, and we shall continue the conversation. Or go sign up now and we'll be able to continue the conversation for way longer than just the length of this YouTube live. Okay, big hugs. Take care. Is it back live already? I thought there was a timer. What happened to the timer? All right. So, yes, I'm live, Amy tells me. Thank you, Amy. Also, I thought I had more time. I'm a little out of breath because I got on my treadmill. I have my little treadmill desk set over here, and I wanted to do it before the live, but I didn't have time. So I was like, I'm going to go walk on my treadmill. So I'm glad I did. It was a good little state change. And also, I'm a little bit more out of breath than I had planned to be. Okay. Sorry I didn't track these comments better personally myself, but I'm glad Amy could track them. So let's see. Can't hear the air conditioner. Thank you for responding to that. And thank you for saying that you're so impressed and I did an amazing job for a first live. I am remarkably comfortable on camera. That's why I have a course called Be Yourself in Video, and also another one called what's it called? Shit. One Take Video Secrets, so that you can record a video in just one take instead of 40 times. And how do I know that you also can record a take in just one take? Record a video? Because you probably ordered your coffee this morning in just one take. You weren't like, oh, I messed up. Let me start my order over again. Like, you just roll with it, right? So it is something that I coach people on, is being more comfortable on camera. And it's really interesting because sometimes I'm coaching people who have never spoken in front of people, but usually I work with people who have worked with groups and in person, but then when they're staring at a camera, they freeze up. But I'm like, I know you got the skills. I know you're used to talking to people. Well, let me help you translate that over here in front of the camera. But I also have had the pleasure and honor of supporting a friend of mine who is a very successful and highly paid public speaker, national speaker, tens of thousands of dollars per hour when she speaks. And I've helped her record videos where she's more authentic because she has worked so hard to create such a polished version of herself that she struggles sometimes. She was struggling to be that comfortable on camera. But I'm like, she's one of my best friends. I'm like, I just want to see the you that you are when we're hanging out. I know. And so then this is when it's fun, and I for better or for worse, I can't help it that I track people's microfacial expressions so closely. But she can be talking, and I'll be like, right there. What'd you do right there? What happened? Because I just lost you. You were right here in the moment with me, and then all of a sudden you got formal. And she's like, oh, well, I started worrying about blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay. And then I help her think about how to not worry about that thing or whatever. So thanks for that feedback. And okay, so now, oops, didn't mean to show that. So, all right, I think Amy put that up there. Or did I? Yeah. I'll read it out loud just in case somebody's listening. The comment is, you said that wasn't my intention for that interaction. Do you think we should have a to-do item for each meal or whatever during a long family visit? Like at breakfast, I will do X with my mother-in-law or whatever. Thanks for asking questions. It's so fun to be able to have an interactive live with other people on live with me where I can ask questions and answer questions. So I feel like I can't see I have to get up over this. There was an option to make it so that it slides my video up so I'm not peeking behind this thing, but that's okay. I'm going to take it down because it feels just, can you take down the comment? Thank you. So I guess there's a couple things. If you find that would be helpful for you and you're like, today I want to work on this, I think that's great. And I think that's helpful. I think it's helpful to have an intention and a focus and to just pick one thing we're going to work on and pay attention to this time. And then next time it can be something else and you can kind of grow that. So I definitely think that can be helpful. But what I was referencing, And this is something that I haven't yet fleshed out. The way I work is I like have an idea and of like, oh, I know how to do this thing. I'm going to create a course about that and teach people it. So then I like come up with a name. I right away create the outline because it's all already in my head. So I'm just getting this outline from my head out into an outline. And then I turn that into a slideshow and then I share it. I've done that already. I've gotten the outline and the slides ready for authentic boundaries and unraveling codependence. What you're asking about is speaking to something that I haven't even yet really brought consciously into what is it that I'm trying to share or teach with people. But I think it is something. The closest that I've come so far is like I want to try to explain to people how it is, like how to track and manage energy in a room or like in interpersonal dynamics. Because one of the things that I am very good at and have done so many times now is plot me in a room with a bunch of people, like family that have conflict between them. And like I can help smooth the way and bridge connection and help people feel heard in ways that they literally have never felt heard before. And so there's something about like, I don't know if the course would be like how to build rapport with people because sometimes it's with new people. Like it's often with new people that I am doing this. And this is why, yeah, this is bigger than just how to build rapport because it's almost about like finding love or like creating love or channeling love and bringing love into different situations. So I'm just talking this through as as I'm thinking it through. I'm an external processor. When I learned that, it was helpful. Because this also ties into why I have more people in my life that I have deep, loving, intimate, emotional, and occasionally physical, intimate connections with than most people have had in their lifetime. And it's why I meet and make connection wherever I fucking go. Like sometimes despite my best intentions. Like I have a number of partners in my life who I am deeply committed and in long-term relationships with. I was not looking for another partner when I hired a subcontractor to help me in my dad's house. My dad died a year ago or a little over that now. And I had to fix up his house in New Jersey. And it was the local people were expensive and I felt like they were kind of seedy. And so I ended up posting an ad for someone in California. I was like, I know that somebody in California has handy person skills and they would be thrilled to come out here for a fraction of what these other people are charging me and just help me with everything. And so I posted a Facebook post, had one person apply. That person comes out 7 days later. Like we've built this deep connection, or like have a deep love. It sounds insane, but there is this deep love connection that in the last year and a half has only deepened and grown and blossomed in these beautiful, incredible ways. Like I wasn't looking to add another fucking partner to my life when I met this person. But it's like I am really good at building authentic connection, which takes being seen and heard, but also seeing and hearing the other person. And so when I say that wasn't my intention, what I meant was like in my quest to build connection, I guess. And so, and sometimes that, like I said, with the example of the asshole brother, like sometimes that way of building connection comes from me letting them know, like kind of demanding respect in a way. It's not a perfect way to say it, but like earning respect. I earn their respect. And with some people who are male chauvinist pigs, you earn their respect by speaking up to them and calling them out in a way that's like playful enough and connective enough that says, hey, even though I know that you act like a male chauvinist pig and everybody in your life treats you like a male chauvinist pig, I know that that's only an identity that you have developed in order to protect yourself because you also were harmed when you were a child and you're dealing with your own childhood trauma. And so it's this weird way that because I see people at a deeper level and can like know them and hold them in that, I can also name these other pieces, and um and it builds connection. And so there is a strategic way that I go about it. And um it's like I said, sometimes I'm like building rapport, sometimes with certain people it's like um with certain people they need to, I guess it's about meeting their needs. Like, what needs does this person have, like, that haven't been met in their life? Do they not feel seen or understood or respected? And so when I become aware of that, and then I can start to um, engage at that level, then that builds connection. And so it's not like I consciously think ahead, like, oh, how am I going to build rapport with this person? It's more, I, who I am, has deep respect and love and care for the core of who other people are, and the child that they were, and the person that may have been fucked up in however many ways, but also for the people who aren't in that, showing up in that way. But it's like when I have that connection, then I don't know what else to say. If you want to ask more questions, then I can try to be more specific in my answer. But so I guess in the question of like your mother-in-law or whatever, if you think it's helpful, or if you want to tell me more about it and I can help you, and kind of like we were saying about listening for the good intentions beneath it, like, and the good intentions aren't always about somebody else. Like, the good intentions might be that they just want to feel appreciated. And so that's why they like complain all the time, right? And so if you want to focus on like, listen, what I'm going to try and listen for the good intentions this time, and figure out like what does matter to this person. That is one way that you can build rapport with them, and that will build, like, strengthen the love, strengthen the connection, and build bridges with people. And that's a whole other thing that I'm excited about, is building bridges. Like, we kind of touched on it here, but I feel like there's more I could say about that. Okay, so that's all for now, unless, oh, yeah, so unless there's another question comes up on that, but otherwise we'll move on to this one. My baby sister is very competitive, and this year has been great for me. I'm worried that if I talk about how well things are going for me, she will be hurt. Should I lie or help her not be hurt? So, thank you for sharing your question. I really love, I don't know, like, I love people who want to be improving themselves, who are caring and considerate of the people around them and care about those people, and are like working through this struggle of how do I be true to myself and also care about the other people. Because, like, I don't want to just be true to myself at the expense of everybody else. Sometimes I can't help it and people get upset, but that's not my goal. Like, I want to be with, and I have found my way. I'm so fucking blessed and have done the work to get to a place where I am with people who can so genuinely celebrate me being me. So, and then it's such a beautiful, like, win-win, but it's not always that way. So, I don't know if you were on at the beginning of this, or at, I don't know when the hell this slide was, but on the slide where I said that if you are worried about that you're not, if you leave a holiday gathering and somebody's going to be upset, then to me, that is a sign of what I define as codependency. I read the book Codependent No More probably a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, and it was life-changing for me. I was like, ooh, this explains a lot of my dynamics in relationships. So if you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. It is old, so some of it is a little bit dated, slightly. I forget if it was like sexism or trans or queer. It was just like a little bit outdated that I don't like, but the general gist of it I really, and it was a little wordy. Like, there's like a list of it starts out with like 1,000 things that might be codependent, but also it's useful because you're like, oh, that, I didn't think of that. So I don't think of it as like some people are defensive. I had somebody be like, I'm not codependent. My partner doesn't think I'm codependent. My therapist doesn't think I'm codependent. So I don't know what you mean that you think I'm codependent. And I'm like, probably because their therapist is also what I would consider codependent, because I think most of us are unraveling like we have patterns of codependency that we have learned that have been helped us survive. And now as we're trying to learn to be more true to ourselves, like it's a byproduct. We have to unravel those threads that have us tied up with other people. So I don't mean it as a bad thing at all when I say that, like that thing there, I would call that codependent. And I would call feeling like you need to lie to your sister codependent. Just like I would call it codependent when I have been in a situation where I'm like, oh, I'm not saying this thing because I'm afraid of how they're going to react. Is this thing reasonable? That's one of the definitions that they gave in the book, is when you avoid doing something reasonable for fear of how the other person is going to react. And it's just such a clear one for me. Like, yes, reasonable is subjective. However, I'm like, if I'm real clear with my partners that I'm in an open poly relationship and they're having a hard time with it, they get to have a hard time with it. But if I choose to go out on a date and I've been real clear that I'm in a poly relationship, it's reasonable that I'm going to go out on a date, right? Like that's reasonable. If I were in a monogamous relationship, it would be totally unreasonable, but I'm not. So that's reasonable. So reasonable depends. Like, is it reasonable that you be honest about your life? Yes. Is it reasonable that you want to celebrate the wins that you've had? Yes. Is it reasonable that you are worried about how your sister's going to feel? Sure. But if you're avoiding doing the thing because you're afraid of how she's going to react, then that's what I would consider codependent. And then that brings up the whole question. What are you afraid of? Another thing I talked about earlier on in here, you could go back and watch, is like most likely you're afraid of the price. You're afraid there's going to be some price that you're going to have to pay to, if you're honest with her. And maybe it's that she's going to say something snarky. Maybe it's that she's going to complain and go on a rant. Maybe it's that she's not going to talk to you. Like you're afraid of some price that's going to happen if you're honest with her. And also, this is review from earlier, but I say it all the fucking time anyway. Like that price is only going to get more expensive the longer you wait. And you're not actually doing her or you a favor by avoiding paying it right now. Because let's say that you suck it up and you do lie this time, right? Either she's going to find out down the road one way, or eventually you're going to tell her, and then it's going to be worse because you've waited longer, because you've made her more comfortable, because you've played small. Like I learned the hard way coming out of my 16-year marriage that like the longer we compromise on ourselves, it doesn't get better. I feel sorry, I gotta adjust. Did I scratch? Sometimes I get very red when I scratch. So I could almost come up with a whole list of examples of that. But my main thing is like nip it in the bud. As soon as I identify this is a codependent pattern that's happening with me, then I think about, okay, so what would the reasonable thing be to do? And how can I do that? And then also, how am I going to deal with the ramifications of that? That in some cases you can very easily anticipate. You probably can. So, so I'm just looking here at what you in your comment. You said she will be hurt. Should I lie or help her not be hurt? So, number one, we can love and care about people. Hopefully we all do. But it's not our job or responsibility to change how they feel. That's one of the other definitions of codependency, or one of the main things is like us trying to control. At first, I was like, what? Being codependent isn't about trying to control other people's feelings. That's the subtitle, something like that, about the book, Codependent No More, How to Stop Trying to Control Others. And I was like, well, shit. I am trying to control my sister by changing what information I give her. Or for me, it was my partner's. Or, yeah. So when we are committed to unraveling those codependencies and to our own personal growth, it means doing the thing in the way that is not codependent as soon as we feel ready, and figuring out how to deal with that. So there's feelings on both sides. The ones that are on your side that are really your responsibility to deal with are, sounds like you're probably going to feel, you already feel a little bit of guilty for your level of success. And you're also going to feel probably guilty for hurting her because things are going well for you. The thing that I would remind you of, to me, when I have been jealous or envious of somebody else every single fucking time, it's because they have something that I want, right? Like, it points to what it is in my life that I want. Even if right now I believe I can't have that thing, it's what I want and long for. So, this is what we've been talking about, this balance of like, how do I be authentic to myself, have my own feelings and needs, and also hold the other person with care and compassion? And so, to me, there is this third path. A lot of what I do is helping people figure out the third path, because they're like, well, do I tell her and hurt her, or do I not tell her and not be authentic? And I'm like, let's look at the different options in between there, right? So, how do you tell her? And also, it may be, I mean, it depends what the nature of the relationship is. So, I don't know enough about to say exactly. Um, but it depends what the nature of the relationship is. But you can tell her and say, and then this is a big one. Like I said, naming, like telling the whole truth and naming the unspoken. So you can tell her, you know what? I was afraid to tell you this. I even submitted a question to a YouTuber to ask if I should lie to you about this because I was really worried that it was going to hurt you. But I want you to know, I feel like I have to celebrate the fact that this year has gone really fucking well for me, and I don't know how to hold it with how hard your year has been. I don't know why. I guess I get teary again, weepy Wendy, because there's so much power in that, and people feel that. And you are, right now, you are holding your feelings and her feelings. You care about yourself and you care about her, and you just haven't been able to find this third path in between where she feels heard and you feel heard and we both feel understood. And in some ways it's not that hard, and I don't mean it in like an offensive way, because it is hard because so many of us don't do it all the time. But the answer is usually simple. Just fucking say it all. Say it all, the whole thing. Don't just tell her the good parts, tell her the guilty, tell her you feel guilty about it. Tell her you feel worried about her. Tell her you didn't know how to handle it. Tell her you don't actually fucking know how you're going to deal with it if she goes on a rant, or you're worried about her going on a, like, a lot of times that will build the connection, that will help them feel seen and heard, and that will shift the dynamic. Oh, yay! I'm so glad that's helpful. Thank you. Yeah, that will change the dynamic. And even if it doesn't, so this is the part where, like, I think that 60 to 80% of the time, naming that whole thing, you will get a different response from her than you ever have, because you're not playing this game of how do I keep her happy, which actually doesn't feel good. Like, if you think about when you've been the person that the other person is trying to keep happy, if that's happened to you, it doesn't really feel good. Like, you can't really trust them. You feel like they're not bringing their full self to you. It just, like, people settle for it. Most people don't know that there's a better option, and most people don't know that there's the potential for more depth than what is there. But when you bring that, and I think it's one of the reasons that I can connect with people as powerfully as I do, is because when you bring the whole of yourself authentically, people fucking know. They may not have known their whole life. And literally, I had this happen to me last month with like a 67-year-old blue collar Trump worker dude. I never met him before. We were best friends. I mean, not we were best friends. I would probably be amongst his best friends 2 days later because he felt seen and heard and understood by me. I lost my train of thought on why I was saying that. Because I showed up in my authenticity, and there's something powerful when you can step into your own truth and power, and you're not playing the game of making other people happy. It's much easier to, number one, hear other people without being upset by it. Number two, um, recognize when they're not being authentic or grounded or connected. And that's something that I found out with my partners as we've been talking through it. We're like, why is it that I'm so good at sort of fishing out through and finding connection with people? Part of it is that I'm the same fucking Wendy pretty much everywhere. I get a little nicer at the DMV and I swear a little less and I hold my breath to make it through. But I'm the same person with my kids. I swear with my kids. I joke with my kids. I'm the same person that I am here with you on video as I am with my clients, as I am at the grocery store. Like that unto itself, I think really builds trust and rapport with people because they may not like how I show up, but they know how it's going to be. Maybe they don't like an aspect of it or it's hard for them to deal with. But they know what it is and why it is, and they know that it's true to me. And so they can decide if they want to have me in their life and accept that or not. So let's see. We have, excuse me, you don't know about this, Amy, but there's one question that I put in my slideshow that I want to address too, because it came up from somebody in the membership this week. And she said that we were talking about dating, and she said she met someone that she likes, but they're always really vague about what they do for work, and that she can tell that they have a lot of money, and she doesn't want them to think that she's interested in them for their money, and she wants to respect their privacy, but it feels weird and is slightly concerning that they're being so vague, but they have literal cash lying around. First of all, respect their privacy is an interesting phrase for me. But again, this is where saying the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth is really helpful. I wonder if my microphone should have been adjusted all this time. So again, it's kind of like with explaining the whole nuance of it with the sister. It's like, so then just tell them that. Be like, I want to respect your privacy. I don't usually say that because I'm like, you don't have to answer if you don't want to. I mean, I guess that's my version of it. I'm like, if you don't want to answer, that's fine. But I'm really confused. And it feels, I don't want you to think that I'm here for your money because I don't really care about that, but it's just confusing to me, like why you're kind of being cagey about it, right? And also, the reason that I put this up here is because she was afraid that this person would think that she was just there, or I don't know if it's just there, not just there, but that she would be there for his money. Like, is the money appealing to her? Probably. But she's like worrying about how she's acting in order to make sure that he doesn't think something about her. If that's not true about her, then she doesn't need to worry about how she's acting. So if there's, and I'm just externally processing this as we go. I didn't put this on the slide. But if you genuinely care about your sister, then you don't have to worry that your sister thinks you don't care about her, because you do actually care about her. And if she thinks you don't, then that's her own stories or her own healing that needs to happen, or she can talk to you or clarify. But if you know in your heart that you do care about her, if you know in your heart that you're not actually there for, that you don't care about the money, or even if you know that you do actually care about the money a little bit, then you can say that. Then you can be like, I gotta admit, it's kind of appealing that you have all of this, but it also freaks me out because I'm like, where'd it come from? Why is it here? Why aren't you answering my questions? So answering this, like the whole, naming all of the pieces that are true for you, and giving yourself permission to have conflicting feelings. That was another thing that has come up for people, is like, oh, I'm also tiny. Let me make me bigger. There we go. Another thing that comes up is, and I'm going to wrap up soon, I think, but I lost my train of thought. Amy, do you remember what I was saying? I'm so glad that this is only the first time that this has happened today. You're welcome that I chose not to eat dairy or eggs today at breakfast. I was so close, and I was like, nope, I have a live stream, and I'm not going to be able to track things very well if I do that. So, if naming the whole truth of what we're talking about, and conflicting feelings, that's what it was, that often we've been told, or like it gets overly simplified, like, well, you should be, are you happy about this thing? And so for somebody who, let's say you hate where you live, you've lived there your whole life, you want to live somewhere else, you actually have someone who's willing to buy you a ticket to get out of there. And then all of a sudden you're like, but I won't have any friends, and I'm not going to be able to do the things that I usually do, and I'm scared. Like, it's okay, and it's logical, and it's reasonable to have conflicting feelings. And you get to name the feelings, and you get to live in the truth, the like multi-complex truth, that you want conflicting things, that you care about multiple things, that yes, you want to get out of here, and also you feel scared. You're excited and scared. It happens all the fucking time. And if we dumb it down, I don't mean, but like if we get expected to be like, well, how do you feel about this? And you just have to name one feeling. Or if you tell yourself it's wrong to be feeling the other way, you're not living your truth. And living your truth means embracing the multi-dimensional complex beings that we are, even when we're at our family gatherings. And also seeing the other people as the multi-dimensional complex feelings that you are, that they are, that they are. So I think that is where I shall leave off. Is that true? Well, I was going to say, if you want more support like this from me, I have a couple other slides about the membership, but I think you already heard about that earlier in my little video I pre-prepared that I was fairly proud of. But yes, I wanted to say that. Thank you, Amy. So if you use, so right now, the general member price is $100 a month. And then the partner price, I'm calling it, is, did I say that right? The general member price is $200 a month, and the partner price is $500 a month. But if you use the coupon code SUBLOVE100, like subscriber, or Dom Sub if you want to think about that, but I meant it as subscriber, SUBLOVE100, then it would be $100 a month for the general membership and $400 a month for the partner membership. And basically the main, I think the only difference at this point, it's an ever evolving program, but the only difference right now is that when you come in as a general member, we have your welcome call where we sit down for like 90 minutes, an hour and a half to 2 hours, and talk and get to know each other. And we'll do that like once a year. Whereas if you sign up at the partner level with the coupon code 400 a month, then we meet every other month. So it's pretty often. And we get like more one-on-one support when it does feel like more of a partnership. So yeah, and I also do retreats and intensives, but generally, um, well, I like to get to know people first. So if you want to join my membership, I generally am doing that for people who are in the membership. If you, for some strange reason, didn't want to join the membership but would like to do like a retreat with me quickly and soon, then you could shoot me an email, wendy@wendygarrido.com, or find me on WhatsApp at Wendy Garrido. Yeah, there you go. Thank you, Amy. Amy, this was our first live stream. We used StreamYard. It was our first time using StreamYard. I think it did go very well. Thank you so much, Amy. I'm a little impressed with myself that I didn't even time that content and it just turned out to be an hour and a half on the dot, basically. So I love that. And we're going to be doing these every other Sunday, maybe more often, but every other Sunday for now. And so if you subscribe, then you get notified for sure. And if you want to submit a question beforehand, wendygarrido.com/help. Let's see, any other slides? I'll just show you. Yeah. Oh, this isn't the titty picture. It was kind of an edge. One of my banners, I'm in my bikini and you can see my cleavage, and I was like, oh, that's a little scary, but also it felt right. Because I was like, this is me living my fucking life. This is the bathing suit that I wear to the beach if I met you at the pool in northern Italy, Lago di Garda, which is where I was when I took these pictures. That's how we'd meet. So, yeah. So I think that's all. I'm not going to read all those things. There's the information. I think that's all. Is there anything else? Coupon code. That's the end of my slides. So thank you so much. I hope you join me for this and every live stream that you want to. And I would love to have you in the membership if you want to. And if you have any questions, please reach out and let me know. I am totally, and also like if there's something on the registration page that's weird, like this is a work in progress. I was making changes to the sales and registration pages a half hour before we could hit live on here. You know what I mean? So yeah, if anything's not clear, then just let me know. And we are an ever evolving team and business around here. So your questions will help bring you clarity and me clarity. Okay, my kids have been wonderfully quiet and self-sufficient during this time. I told my son, I was like, if someone knocks on the door, do you interrupt me? He's like, no. I was like, if there's a fire in the kitchen, do you interrupt me? He's like, yes. It was pretty adorable when we went through a couple others. But I'm going to go pay attention to them right now. But this was lovely. Can't wait to do it again. And thank you so much for joining and participating and watching afterwards if you're watching on the replay. And we'll be in touch soon. Okay. Take care. Thank you. Goodbye.